You think you know the person you sleep next to? You think 12 years building a life means something. I did. Until 8:17 p.m. on a Tuesday, when my world didn't just implode, it evaporated. They say the truth sets you free. They forget to mention that first. It guts you where you work. And when the woman holding your husband's hand looks at you like you're nothing, that's when you realize the truth doesn't set you free. It arms you. My name is Alara Vance. To the richest people in Manhattan, I am the invisible hand that ensures their world runs perfectly. I am the director of events at the Seraphim Tower, a place so exclusive you cannot simply book it. You must be invited to. Tonight was the pinnacle of my year, the Azure Gala, the city's largest and most obscene charity fundraiser. I was in the zone. A sleek black earpiece was my only connection to reality, a quiet voice from my coordination team mapping the controlled chaos. A black blazer, tailored trousers, practical but expensive flat shoes, my uniform. I moved through the wings of the grand ballroom, a ghost orchestrating a fantasy for 1,000 billionaires. The air was thick with the scent of 10,000 imported orchids and the metallic tang of ambition. From the main floor, I could hear the dull roar of conversation and the high, thin ring of crystal flutes. My husband, Marcus, was supposed to be in Boston. A quick overnight trip, he'd said. A last-minute fund management crisis. I hadn't even had time to kiss him goodbye. Just a hurried, "Love you," shouted at his retreating back. "Ilara, we have a spill." My coordinator's voice crackled in my ear. "Main bar, East Wing. It's a big one. Red." "On it," I murmured, already moving. A guest in vintage Dior had collided with a server. A crimson stain was spreading across the white marble floor. This required my attention, but the main artery behind the ballroom was now blocked by cleaning crews. I cursed under my breath and pivoted. "I'm taking Service Corridor C," I said into my mic, pushing through a heavy, soundproofed door. It was a rarely used hallway, reserved for high-level staff and emergency catering. It was quiet, starkly lit, smelling of industrial cleaner and cold steel. And that's where I stopped. He was there, not in Boston. He was here, in my building, in a flawless custom tuxedo I'd helped him pick out. Marcus. He wasn't alone. He was holding hands with a woman, a spectacular creature dripping in diamonds with hair the color of champagne. Her dress was sapphire silk, clinging to her like a second skin. I knew her instantly. Sloane Harrington, the heiress to the Harrington Fund, the very company Marcus worked for. The world went silent. The industrial hum of the fluorescent lights overhead became a deafening roar. In my ear, my coordinator was still talking. "Alara, table 7 needs more wine. Alara, do you copy? Marcus saw me." His eyes widened, not in guilt, but in pure animal panic. His hand, the one I'd held 12 hours ago, convulsed in Sloane's grasp. He looked like a man who had just seen his executioner. "Ilara," he choked out. My name sounded like filth in his mouth. Sloane, however, did not flinch. She let her gaze travel over me, taking in my simple black uniform, my headset, my clipboard. It was a slow, dismissive appraisal, the kind one gives to furniture, or a bug. She tightened her grip on my husband's hand. Then she spoke, her voice bored and laced with privilege. "Are you the cleaner we need more champagne at table 12? I felt nothing. The shock was so profound it bypassed emotion and went straight to ice. My training, the thousands of failed events, the demanding clients, the impossible requests, it all kicked in. I was a master of disaster. This was just another disaster. I looked past her, my eyes locking directly on my husband of 12 years. I did not acknowledge her. I lifted my hand, not to strike him, but to press the transmit button on my radio. My voice was calm, clear, and perfectly modulated. "Security, this is Vance. We have 2 unauthorized individuals in Service Corridor C. I need them escorted off the premises immediately." I turned on my heel. "Ilara, wait!" Marcus yelled, finally dropping Sloane's hand. But my security team, men loyal to me, men whose families I'd helped, were already rounding the corner. I did not look back. I simply pulled my phone from my pocket, raised it, and snapped a single high-definition photograph of their stunned, horrified faces as the guards flanked them. For the security incident report, I murmured to myself. I pushed back through the heavy door, the sound of the gala hitting me like a physical blow, the music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. I walked onto the main floor, picked up a stray napkin, and signaled to a waiter. "Table 7 needs more wine," I said. I ran the Azure Gala for 5 more hours. I managed the live auction, coordinated the governor's departure, and oversaw the breakdown. I smiled at guests. I solved problems. I was perfect. I did not miss a single beat while my entire life bled out on the service corridor floor. It was 3 a.m. when I slid the key into the lock of our Upper West Side penthouse. The last truck was loaded. The last staff member signed out. The gala, by all accounts, had been a staggering success. The apartment was silent. It hit me harder than the noise of the party. Our home, usually smelling of the espresso Marcus brewed or the expensive sandalwood candles I liked, smelled of nothing. It was clean. Too clean. It was the sterile, waiting silence of a place that hadn't been lived in, a showroom. I walked past the dark living room, my heels clicking on the imported marble floors, and went straight to our bedroom. I didn't turn on the lights. The floor-to-ceiling windows let in enough of the city's perpetual glow. I opened the door to our shared walk-in closet, and there it was, tucked neatly on its designated shelf, right where it always sat when he was home, was the small, black leather duffel bag he'd supposedly packed for Boston. He hadn't even bothered to take it. The lie wasn't sophisticated. It was lazy. It was arrogant. He hadn't packed for Boston because he was never going. He was, it seemed, just going to table 12. My phone, which I'd kept on silent event mode all night, buzzed in my blazer pocket. I pulled it out. The screen was a blinding cascade of desperation. 27 missed calls from Marcus, 53 frantic text messages. "Ilara, please answer me. That wasn't what it looked like. Sloane means nothing to me, I swear. Ilara, you are destroying us. Call me." I pressed the volume down button on the side of the phone, holding it until the vibration icon appeared and then crossed itself out. I silenced him. I tossed the phone onto the kitchen counter. It skidded across the cold granite and stopped. I went to the living room. I didn't sit on the plush, comfortable sofa we had chosen together. I sat on the hard, architectural chaise lounge he'd always claimed to hate. I looked out the window, 50 stories above the sleeping city. This was the part where I was supposed to shatter. This was the part for the screaming, the weeping, the throwing of expensive crystal. It didn't come. What came instead was a quiet, cold hum. It started low in my stomach and spread out to my fingertips. It wasn't grief. It was calculation. The shock had burned off, leaving behind a terrifying, crystalline rage. The timeline began to unspool in my head, organizing itself like one of my event binders. The long business trips that conveniently fell over weekends, the late-night client calls where he would step out onto the terrace, his voice too low to hear, his sudden, intense insistence, about 8 months ago, that he should take over all our investments. "You're too busy with the tower, baby," he'd said, rubbing my shoulders. "Let me handle the portfolio. Let me make our money work for us. I am a master planner. My entire life, my entire identity, is built on anticipating every risk. I anticipate the rain on an outdoor wedding, the food poisoning, the high-profile guest's ego, the structural failure of a stage. I manage 1,000-point checklists, and I had missed the single greatest risk in my own home. I had missed the rot in my own foundation. I stood, walked to my study, and retrieved my laptop. I sat back down in the dark. I always managed the household bills. the daily logistics. He was too busy with his big picture funds. I opened our joint checking account. I scrolled past the mortgage payment for this penthouse, past the utilities, past the wine club subscription. And then I saw it. A recurring monthly payment. $5,000. Every single month. On the 15th. For the past 12 months. The payee was listed only as Tribeca Holdings, LLC. My fingers flew across the keyboard. A corporate registry search. Tribeca Holdings, LLC was a shell company, a front for a high-end property management group specializing in discreet, luxury rentals. My breath hitched. He didn't just have a mistress. He had a lease. He had another apartment. In Tribeca, he wasn't just cheating. He was building a parallel life. He had a home with her, funded by our money, right under my nose while I worked 60-hour weeks. The plan began to form then, not in small pieces, but all at once, downloading into my brain as a perfect, complete, and terrible blueprint. I was not going to save my marriage. I was not going to cry. I was going to do what I do best. I was going to plan an event. The event would be his complete and total destruction. The sun hadn't yet broken through the Manhattan haze when I started making my calls. I didn't call a lawyer. A lawyer would tell me to wait, to be strategic, to divide assets. I wasn't dividing. I was amputating. My first call was at 6:01 a.m. "Mikhail," I said into the phone. "It's Alara Vance." Mikhail ran Apex Fine Art Logistics. They were the only team I trusted to move million-dollar sculptures at the Seraphim Tower. I had personally given them that contract, a contract worth 7 figures a year. They owed me. "Mikhail, I have a sensitive personal situation. I need your most discreet team, the White Glove crew, now." He didn't ask questions. He just said, 8:30 a.m. While I waited, I sat at my laptop with a fresh cup of black coffee. I opened our joint bank accounts. The balance was healthy, a testament to my obsessive saving and his high-paying job. I did the math, exactly 50%. I opened a new, online-only high-yield savings account in my name, Alara Vance. The process took less than 3 minutes. I transferred my half. The exact sum. Not a penny more, not a penny less. Then, I clicked on the tab for the joint investment portfolio, the one he was so eager to manage for us. My stomach was cold. I logged in. The number on the screen made no sense. It was supposed to be our future. It was supposed to be our retirement, our safety net. It was supposed to be well over $500,000. It was $4,230. I scrolled through the transaction history, a series of systematic liquidations, large sums of stock, sold off, with the cash transferred out. The transfers were listed as Aperture Solutions, the Shell Company, the Tribeca Lease. The ice in my veins didn't just crack, it solidified into something unbreakable. This wasn't a passionate mistake. This wasn't a midlife crisis. This was a long con. He hadn't just been cheating on me. He had been actively, methodically stealing from me, from us. At 8:30 a.m., on the dot, my doorbell rang. 4 men in unmarked black uniforms stood in my hall. They were quiet, precise, and looked more like surgeons than movers. I pointed. His closet. Every suit, every shoe, every tie. His office. Every book, every file, every piece of technology. The wine cellar. The left rack is his. The right is mine. They worked with a speed and efficiency that I, as an event planner, deeply respected. They didn't speak. They just packed. The sound of packing tape being ripped was the only sound in the penthouse, a sharp, surgical counterpoint to the city's morning hum. While they worked, I made my second call. "Dimitri, it's Alara Vance from 50B. Dimitri was the head of our building's security, a man for whom I'd secured a coveted catering gig for his son's wedding. "Ms. Vance, a pleasure. Was the gala a success?" "It was, thank you. Dimitri, I need to report a lost key fob." Please deactivate Marcus Vance's access to the building and all private elevators immediately. A beat of silence. Deactivated, Ms. Vance. And should I post his name with the front desk? Yes, I said. He is not to be permitted entry. An hour later, the apartment was half empty. His presence had been professionally erased. The men left as quietly as they came, with the entire contents of his life loaded into an unmarked truck, destined for a storage unit in New Jersey that I had paid for, in his name, for exactly 1 month. I walked through the empty spaces. His closet was a morgue. I did, however, go to the very back of it. I pulled out a single cardboard box. I packed it myself. I put in his shredded, decade-old running shoes. I put in his faded Georgetown University t-shirt, the one he slept in. I put in the world's greatest husband coffee mug I had given him after our first anniversary. I carried the box down to my own car in the garage. I drove myself downtown, through the morning traffic, to Tribeca. I found the gleaming, anonymous new building. I didn't try to go in. I simply placed the single, pathetic cardboard box on the doorstep, right next to the polished brass call box, and drove away. My power was never digital. I don't hack. I talk. My currency isn't data. It's favors. My network is my weapon, and it is woven into the very fabric of elite New York. I've planned their weddings, their funerals, their daughters' sweet 16s. I know where the skeletons are buried because I've often been the one to help them rearrange the closet. Now, I was pulling on those threads. My first call that morning was to Celeste, my florist. She can source extinct species of orchid if a client demands it. Celeste, darling, I'm in a terrible bind, I said, my voice pitched with professional urgency. I have a client, impossibly difficult, who needs a spontaneous gift. Something ostentatious. Alara, for you I can have a wall of roses delivered in an hour, she said. You're a lifesaver. Speaking of ostentatious, you just reminded me. I saw Sloane Harrington at the gala. Her diamonds nearly blinded me. Are you handling her flowers now? A delicate pause. Celeste lives on discretion, but she lives on my contracts more. Between us, Ms. Vance, she said, her voice dropping. She's one of ours now. A new standing order. Massive. We send 3 dozen white peonies to her Tribeca apartment every Tuesday. The man who pays for it, a Mr. Marcus Vance, is very specific about the card. Is he now? I said, keeping my voice light. He must be a romantic. Send my difficult client the orchids. Celeste, you've just given me the perfect idea. I hung up. 3 dozen peonies. Weekly. To her apartment. Paid for by my husband. The confirmation was just logistics. My next stop was lunch. Not a power lunch, but a favor call. I met Arthur Finley at Le Bernardin in a quiet back booth. Arthur works high up in the credit division at American Express, specifically managing their Centurion Black Card accounts. 3 years ago, I saved his daughter's wedding from an absolute hurricane, literally moving the entire 400-person event indoors in under 2 hours. He'd told me then, Alara, if you ever need anything at all. Arthur, thank you for meeting me, I said, putting my hand on his. I projected wifely concern, a slight tremor in my voice. I'm worried about Marcus. Worried? He asked, frowning. His health. His spending, I whispered, leaning in. He's been so stressed, working so hard, but there are these expenses. I don't know who else to ask. I'm afraid he's in some kind of trouble. Maybe gambling. Or... Arthur's face softened. He saw a distraught wife, not a predator. Alara, you know I can't. I know, I said, cutting him off gently. I would never ask you to show me a statement. Never. I have this sick feeling. Are there anomalies? Anything that a wife should be truly worried about? Are there hotels in Atlantic City markers? He sighed, tapping his fingers. He owed me. He looked around the quiet restaurant. No casinos, he said, his voice low. Not officially. But Ilara, his travel and entertainment expenses are substantial. There was a trip to St. Bart's 2 months ago. Another one 3 weeks before that. First class. Presidential suite. I kept my face a perfect mask of dawning horror. St. Bart's. While I was knee-deep in planning the Azure Gala. And, he hesitated, there was a charge, a significant one, from mid-last month, at Tiffany's, the flagship store. A ring. He didn't buy me a ring. Oh, God, I breathed, letting a tear form. Arthur. And one last thing, he said, now looking at his own napkin, as if angry at the numbers. This is the real anomaly. There are recurring, massive fees going to a consulting firm. Aperture Solutions. Do you know it? Aperture Solutions? The shell company, the Tribeca lease, the empty investment account. My blood ran cold. I've never, I said, my voice thick. I've never heard of it. He looked up, his eyes full of pity. Ilara, the charges for that consulting firm aren't coming from his personal card. They're coming from the corporate account, the Harrington Fund account. I didn't just hear a click. I heard the entire tumbler lock fall into place. He wasn't just stealing from me. He was stealing from his company. He was stealing from Sloane Harrington's father. I thanked Arthur, told him he had confirmed my worst fears, and left him to his very expensive fish. I didn't go home. I went to my office at the tower and made one final call. David, I said. It's Ilara Vance. David Reed is the most feared investigative journalist in the city. I'm the one who got him a last-minute podium at his own book launch after the first venue's ceiling collapsed. Ilara, to what do I owe the pleasure? I need 20 minutes of your time, I said, off the record. I have a hypothetical question for you. About ethics in fund management. The web was spun, the lines were tight, and I hadn't even had to raise my voice. She didn't call. She just appeared, 24 hours after I'd had her and my husband escorted from a service corridor. Sloane Harrington walked into the lobby of the Seraphim Tower. My assistant buzzed me, her voice tight with panic. Ms. Vance, a Sloane Harrington is here. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's insisting. Send her up, Mia, I said calmly. And then please hold all my calls. I stood when she entered. My office is my domain, a sleek, glass-walled space overlooking the chaos of the city. I've had kings and presidents sit in the chairs she was now looking at with disdain. She wore a cream-colored cashmere suit that probably cost more than my first car. This time, she knew exactly who I was. She didn't sit. She walked to the center of the room and placed her crocodile skin handbag on my antique desk. Marcus said you were being difficult, she said. Her voice was the same bored, privileged tone as the night before. Only now it was aimed at me, the wife, not me, the help. He's very upset. You've locked him out of his home. I said nothing. I just watched her. She sighed, as if I were a slow child. Look, Ilara, is it I don't know what you think you saw, but you're embarrassing him, and you're embarrassing yourself. So, let's just cut to the chase. How much do you want to go away? I smiled. It was the smile I saved for clients who asked for a live elephant to be delivered to the 60th floor in an hour. That is not only impossible but stupid smile. I don't want your money. Sloane, I said. My voice was pleasant, professional. I'm more interested in your portfolio. I want to know why you're so happy dating a man who is actively embezzling from your own trust fund. Her perfectly plucked eyebrow twitched. That was the only sign I had hit something. What are you talking about? He's not... Isn't he... I turned my large 40-inch monitor around on its swivel arm so it faced her. I'd been waiting. On the screen was the bank statement I'd pulled from the Aperture Solutions account. This company, I said, tapping the screen. Aperture Solutions. It's a shell, registered to a post office box in Delaware under the name Elizabeth Rourke. That's his aunt's maiden name. By the way, a little clumsy, if you ask me. Sloane's eyes narrowed. trying to read the numbers. "Allow me," I said. "This company has received, over the last 6 months, exactly $500,000. These transfers came directly from the Harrington Fund, your father's fund, all coded as consulting fees and all personally approved by your senior fund manager, Marcus Vance." She went rigid. That's a mistake. That's for consulting. He's a consultant." "He's a thief," I said, my voice still light. "But here's the part you'll love. Sloan. He didn't just use that $500,000 to lease your little love nest in Tribeca, or to buy you those peonies you like so much." I paused. "Oh, yes, the Tiffany's ring. That was a lovely touch. Did you like it?" Her face was white. "The bulk of that money," I continued, "went to pay off gambling debts. A marker at the Borgata in Atlantic City. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was using you. He was using you as a shield to defraud your father, and he was using your family's money to clean up his own pathetic little messes." The shift was immediate. The arrogance, the confidence, the sheer, unbothered privilege, it all just evaporated. In its place was the raw, ugly panic of someone who has just realized they are not the predator, they are the prey. She wasn't his partner in crime. She was just another line item on his list of expenses. She was the piggy bank. She stumbled back, grabbing her purse off my desk as if it were contaminated. "You're lying," she whispered, but there was no conviction. It was the plea of someone who already knew the truth. I leaned back in my leather chair. I looked at her, this perfect, expensive creature, now just a terrified girl. "I think you should go now," I said softly. "The cleaner has an awful lot of work to do." Sloan didn't walk out. She fled. She left behind the scent of expensive perfume and abject fear. She wasn't just a victim. She was my accomplice now, whether she knew it or not. It took less than 48 hours for him to finally break. After Sloan left my office, she must have called him. And after she called him, she must have called her father. The dominoes I had set up began to fall, fast and loud. He didn't come to the service corridor this time. He came through the front doors. It was 4 p.m. on Thursday, the peak of my afternoon tea service in the grand lobby. The air was filled with the gentle sounds of a string quartet and the clinking of fine china, and then that sound was torn apart by his voice. Ilara, get down here." I was on the mezzanine, reviewing the floor plan for that evening's gala. I looked over the polished brass railing. It was Marcus, but it wasn't the Marcus I knew. His bespoke suit was rumpled, the one he must have been wearing since I'd last seen him. His hair was wild, his face was pale and slick with a desperate sweat. He was unshaven. He was the man who had lost everything, and he looked the part. He was roaring in my lobby. My security chief, Dimitri, was already moving toward him, but Marcus shoved past a bellhop. "Don't you touch me! I own this place, my wife!" I walked calmly down the grand staircase, my heels clicking, one by one, on the marble. I didn't rush. I descended like I owned the place, because, in that moment, I did. I stopped on the 3rd step from the bottom, so I was still looking down at him. "Marcus," I said. My voice was low, but it cut through his shouting. "You are disturbing my guests!" His head snapped toward me, his eyes bloodshot and wild with a rage I had never seen. "You!" he seethed. "You ruined me! You bitch! You ruined me!" A few guests gasped. The string quartet faltered, the high note of a violin dying in a squeak. "What did you say to her?" he roared, taking a step closer. Dimitri put a hand on his chest, but Marcus was beyond reason. "What did you say to Sloan? To her father?" "My accounts are frozen. My key fobs are dead. They fired me." "They're talking about an audit." I only told the truth. I replied, my voice perfectly even. "It's the one thing you always said you valued, remember." And just like that, the rage collapsed. His face crumpled. It was the next part of the script, the begging. He lunged for the steps. grabbing the hem of my trousers. "Alara, please," he whimpered. The lobby was silent, watching. "Baby, please. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. She meant nothing." "You know she meant nothing." I was stressed. The pressure. You know the pressure. I looked down at the man clinging to my leg, the man I had loved, the man who had slept beside me for 12 years. I felt the last, final ember of that love turn to ash. "You were stressed," I said, my voice flat. "Is that why you took the money from our retirement fund? Or was it the pressure that made you liquidate my niece's college fund, the one I was managing for my sister, the one she trusted me with?" His head jerked up. His eyes, which had been performing such a desperate, tear-filled plea, went cold. He realized it was over. There was no appeal. There was no saving this. He stood up slowly. The desperation was gone, replaced by a snake-like venom. "If I go down, I'm taking you with me," he whispered, a nasty, final threat. "You think you're so clean you signed the tax returns. Alara, you signed every single one. That's joint fraud. You're an accomplice. You're just as guilty as I am." He smiled then. A broken, ugly thing. He thought he had me. He thought we were bound together in his crime. For the first time, I smiled back. "No, Marcus," I said, my voice light, almost conversational. You see, I was looking at those returns last night, and I noticed the signature. It wasn't quite right. So I had them messengered to a handwriting expert this morning, a man who is, conveniently, already on retainer for the Seraphim Tower. I let the words hang in the silent lobby. "You forged my signature, Marcus. On the last 2 years of federal tax returns, I'm not your accomplice. I'm your first and most credible witness." His face went from white to a mottled, sick gray. He had no more cards to play. I nodded to Dimitri, who had been waiting for my signal. "Escort him out," I said, my voice returning to its normal, professional command. "And this time, Dimitri, please make sure he is served with a restraining order before he reaches the sidewalk. He is not to come within 500 feet of this building, or of me, again." I turned, not watching as they grabbed his arms. I walked back up the stairs as his final, pathetic curses echoed off the marble walls. The chaos in the lobby had barely settled when my personal cell phone, the one I kept for AAA emergencies, vibrated on my desk. It was an unlisted number. I answered. "This is Vance. Ms. Alara Vance." The voice was not a voice. It was an artifact. It was old, deep, and layered with the kind of authority that hasn't had to ask for anything twice in at least 50 years. "This is Augustus Harrington." I froze. He was not just Sloane's father. He was a Wall Street legend, a shark who'd been swimming in those waters since before I was born. "Mr. Harrington," I said, my voice steady. "Do not waste my time with pleasantries. Ms. Vance, my daughter is an idiot, and your husband is a thief. I am in my office. Be here in 30 minutes. I believe we have mutual interests to discuss." It wasn't a request. It was a summons. He hung up. I knew this was a test, a trap, a power play. He was trying to get me off balance, to rush me into his territory on his terms. I called my lawyer, Hannah. "Hannah, I'm being summoned by Augustus Harrington. I need you to meet me there." Augustus. Harrington. Hannah's professional poise cracked for a second. "Alara, that's not a meeting. That's a deposition without a stenographer." "Exactly." "Meet me in the lobby. I'm on my way." I called the unlisted number back. His personal assistant, a man with an identical, terrifyingly clipped voice, answered. "Mr. Harrington's office?" "This is Alara Vance," I said. "I will be at his office as requested. I will be accompanied by my legal counsel." There was a pause. I heard the man cover the receiver, murmur, and then I heard the deep, dry rumble of Augustus Harrington's laugh. The assistant came back on. "That is acceptable. He looks forward to meeting your counsel." He hung up. His office was the entire top floor of the Harrington building. It didn't overlook Central Park, it dominated it. The room was the size of a basketball court, but furnished like a war room from the 19th century. Dark wood, leather-bound books that had never been read, and a single massive mahogany desk positioned in front of the windows, silhouetting him against the city. Augustus Harrington, in the flesh, was smaller than I expected, but he seemed to take up all the oxygen in the room. He did not stand. He just watched us, my lawyer and me, walk the long, carpeted distance to his desk. "Ms. Vance, your lawyer," he said, nodding at us as if we were servants. He gestured to two hard-backed chairs. We sat. He didn't care about my feelings. He didn't care about his daughters. He leaned forward, lacing his gnarled fingers. "Reputation," he said. "That is the only thing of value in this world. Your husband, Ms. Vance, has damaged mine." "Your husband," Hannah began, "acted illegally and—" "Shut up, lawyer," Augustus said, not even looking at her. He looked at me. "I don't care about the law. I care about the optics. Marcus is a stupid amateur, a greedy little boy, but he was my stupid amateur, and his blatant embezzlement of client funds is a problem." "So you're pressing charges," I said. He let out that dry laugh again. "God, no. Charges are public. Charges are messy. Charges mean admitting I hired a moron who stole from me." He leaned in, his eyes like polished stones. "Here is the part you don't know. Ms. Vance, I knew Marcus was skimming. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. I've seen it 100 times. I felt my blood run cold. You knew." "Of course I knew," he snapped. "I let it go. Do you know why? Because your husband was also feeding me insider information about 3 of my competitors. He was a greedy little rat, but he was a useful rat. He was paying for his small thefts with much more valuable information." He sat back, a look of profound disgust on his face. "The problem," he said, "is not that he stole. The problem is that he got sloppy. He stole from his own retirement fund. He stole from his wife's family. And he got caught. By you. In your ridiculous hotel lobby. That makes it messy. That makes it public." He opened a drawer in his desk and slid a single piece of paper across the polished wood. It was a blank check, already signed. "Here is the deal," he said. "You are going to give me every piece of evidence you have, the forged tax returns, the handwriting analysis, the Aperture Solutions bank statements. You will give it all to me. You will sign nothing. You will say nothing. You will file for a very quiet, very fast divorce. In exchange," he continued, "I will handle Marcus, quietly. He will disappear, and you will write a number on that check, any number you want, a number that makes you whole for the money he stole, and for your pain and suffering. And then we never speak of this again." It was the perfect solution. He would get to bury the evidence, protect his firm, and get rid of his Marcus problem. And I would get my money back. I would be rich. I looked at the check. I looked at the shark sitting in front of me, and I picked it up. I held the check in my hand. It was beautiful, heavy cardstock, signed with a thick, angry blue ink signature. It was a key to a new life, an easy life. All I had to do was let him win. I looked up from the check and met his cold, reptilian gaze. Hannah, my lawyer, was vibrating with tension beside me, but she knew to stay silent. This was my play. "You want me to help you cover this up?" I said. It wasn't a question. I slid the check, that beautiful, heavy check, back across the acres of polished mahogany. It stopped just short of his manicured hands. "I want you to help me control the damage," he corrected, his voice like gravel. "A public scandal hurts my investors. It hurts my firm. And make no mistake, Ms. Vance, it will splash onto you, the wife, the accomplice." "I'm not his accomplice," I said, the words sharp. And I don't care about a cover-up. I care about justice. Hannah's head twitched. This was not the legal advice she would have given. Justice. Augustus scoffed. Justice is a fantasy for children and poor people. This is Wall Street. We deal in outcomes. I am offering you an outcome. And I am offering you one, I countered. You think this is just about his affair, or the money he stole from me. I don't care about that. That's a civil matter. It's messy, as you say. I leaned forward. Marcus forged my signature on 2 years of federal tax documents. That is not a messy little problem. Mr. Harrington, that is a federal crime. That is an ironclad non-negotiable. Go to prison for 5 to 10 years crime. I don't want your money. I want to see him charged. Augustus Harrington stared at me. He wasn't angry. He wasn't annoyed. For the first time since I'd walked in, he looked impressed. He saw me. He saw that I wasn't just another victim. I was a player. So you'll go to the press, he said, testing me. You'll burn down my firm to get at your husband. You'll destroy my daughter's reputation. No, I said. That's what you don't understand. I'm not a fool. A public scandal, as you said, splashes onto everyone. I'm an event planner. My entire business is built on discretion and reputation. I don't want a circus any more than you do, but I will not let him walk away with a quiet disappearance. Then what, precisely, are you proposing, Ms. Vance? He asked, the Ms. Vance now laced with a new, grudging respect. You and I said, laying out the blueprints for his new reality. We are going to take this evidence, all of it, the forged signatures, the aperture statements, the insider trading you so kindly admitted to letting slide. We are not going to the New York Post. We are going to the district attorney's office. Together. Hannah's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room. Augustus looked stunned. That's public. It's controlled. I corrected him instantly, using his own word. It's a controlled narrative. And I'm an expert in narrative. We don't leak it. We present it. The story isn't Harrington Investments gets duped by a low-level manager. The story is Harrington Investments uncovers fraudulent manager and proactively roots out corruption. You, Mr. Harrington, are the hero. You discovered the rot. You were disgusted by his disloyalty, and you personally handed him over to the authorities. You are the vanguard of ethics on Wall Street. Your investors will love you. Your reputation will be enhanced. I sat back, letting the plan settle in the air between us. I continued, am just the cooperating witness, the loyal wife, now estranged, of course, who discovered his betrayal and did the right, painful thing by supporting you. Marcus is the villain, the only villain. You win. I win. He burns. A slow, reptilian smile spread across Augustus Harrington's face. It was a terrible, beautiful thing to see. He loved it. It was brutal. It was effective. It was cynical. It made him the winner. Ms. Vance, he said, you are a far more interesting woman than my daughter gave you credit for. He stood up, a sign that the meeting was over. Done, he said. We will do it your way. We will hand the little bastard to the DA. He walked to the window, looking down at the city he owned. But we will do it my way first. We will not just give him to them. We will put him in a box. We will tie a bow on it, and we will get his full, tearful, and legally binding confession for them. He turned back to me. We're going to set a trap, Ms. Vance, and you, my dear, are going to be the bait. This was my art, the final, perfect event. I was using my power at the Seraphim Tower for the last time, not to create a fantasy for a client, but to stage an execution. I chose the venue with meticulous care, the Mirror Room. It was our most exclusive, a small, private banquet space on the penthouse level, paneled in antique, smoked mirrors. It was a room I had used for $100,000 dinners for boards of directors and secret political fundraisers. It was a room designed for whispers, and a room that, as I knew, had the most sophisticated, completely invisible audio and video recording capabilities in the building. The bait was sent at 2 p.m. by Hannah, my lawyer, an official email to Marcus's personal account. The tone was conciliatory but firm. It implied that after a tense but productive meeting, Mr. Augustus Harrington was prepared to be magnanimous. He was offering a substantial severance package, enough to clear his debts and start fresh, on 2 conditions. First, he sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement regarding the Harrington Fund and the Harrington family. Second, he offer a full personal apology to me, Alara, in a mediated reconciliation meeting. The email, drafted by Harrington's own legal sharks, was a masterpiece. It was a life raft thrown to a drowning man. Marcus, who was by now completely toxic, fired, locked out of his home, and cut off by his mistress, responded in under 60 seconds. Yes, he wrote. Absolutely. Thank you. When? We set it for the next day. High noon, I went to the mirror room alone, the morning of. I didn't need a team. I ran the checklist myself. I had a single, long, imposing table of dark mahogany set in the center. I placed 3 chairs, one at the head, for me, one at the side, for him, and one, conspicuously empty, at the other end. I stood in the corner and tested the systems. I spoke a single sentence to the empty room. The meeting will begin at 12 o'clock. I went to the adjoining observation room, a space hidden behind a one-way mirrored wall, normally used for security or translation, and replayed the video. The audio was crystal clear. The high-definition camera captured the entire table, every reflection, every angle. It was perfect. At 11:30, Augustus Harrington's legal team arrived. 4 of them. They didn't come to my room. They went straight to the observation room, setting up their laptops and legal pads. They were here as witnesses for their boss. At 11:45, I stood at the head of the table, my back to the door, looking at my own reflection in the smoked glass. I was calm. I was a conductor waiting for the first note. The door opened, but it wasn't Marcus. It was Sloane. She looked terrible. She was pale. Her expensive clothes looked slept in, and her eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. The arrogance I had seen in my office was gone, replaced by the shaky, exhausted fear of a child who had been yelled at by her powerful father. My father said I had to be here, she whispered, her voice trembling. He said I had to see it. I looked at her, this broken little girl who had tried to buy my silence. I felt nothing for her, no pity, no anger. She was just a prop. You will not sit at the table, I said. My voice was low, but it commanded the room. I pointed to the darkest corner of the room, a small alcove near the door, where the shadows pooled and the mirrors didn't quite reach. You will stand there. You will be silent. You were there to watch him cheat on me. Now, you will be here to watch him bury himself. She flinched, but she was a Harrington. She was trained to obey her father. She nodded, her throat tightening, and went to the corner, disappearing into the shadows. A minute later, the door to the mirror room opened again. Marcus walked in. He had managed to get a new suit. It was ill-fitting, cheap. He had tried to shave, but had missed a spot. He was a man trying to put his mask back on, and failing. But on his face, he wore a bright, desperate, artificial smile. The smile of a man who was about to be forgiven, about to be saved, about to be paid. Alara, he said, his voice full of that false, practiced warmth I had once mistaken for love. Thank God. Thank you for doing this. He sat down in the chair I had designated for him, the cheap suit rustling. He tried to project relief, gratitude. He looked at me, then nodded respectfully to the empty chair at the far end of the table, and then again to the small, dark lens of the camera on the wall, assuming it was off. Ilara, he said, his voice thick with fake emotion. Thank you for this. for mediating. And please tell Mr. Harrington, I am so... I did not let him finish. I did not waste time. There is no severance package. Marcus, I said. My voice was calm, clear, and carried in the quiet room. His smile froze. What, Alara? The email. The email was a logistical courtesy. I reached for the first of 3 identical thick document binders my lawyer had prepared. I slid it across the mahogany. It made a solid, heavy sound. These, I said, are the full statements for Aperture Solutions. Every transaction, including the lease on the Tribeca apartment and the weekly payments for 3 dozen white peonies. His face lost a shade of color. I can explain that. I slid the second binder, placing it neatly on top of the first. This is the complete analysis from a certified forensic handwriting expert. It confirms, unequivocally, that my signature was forged on the last 2 years of our joint federal tax returns. He was no longer breathing. He was just staring. I placed the third and final binder on the stack. And this is the one that I think Mr. Harrington will find most interesting. This is the complete transaction history from our joint retirement account. It details the systematic liquidation of our assets and cross-references the cash transfers to your unsecured markers at the Borgata in Atlantic City. He was silent, utterly, completely still. His eyes were wide, the mask of the desperate, repentant husband gone, replaced by the blank, hollow stare of a cornered animal. Alara, he whispered, his voice cracking. What? What are you doing? I'm creating a record. Marcus, I said, leaning back in my chair, because you are being recorded. As if on cue, a voice boomed from the hidden speakers in the ceiling. It was Augustus Harrington, and it was amplified to the volume of God. And we are filming, you little bastard! Marcus screamed. He physically jumped from his chair, knocking it over, his head snapping around to find the source of the voice. You didn't just cheat on your wife, Augustus's voice thundered, echoing off the mirrors. You defrauded my company. You stole from my clients. You defrauded my daughter. A movement in the corner. Sloane stepped out of the shadows. Her face was not pale anymore. It was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. The tears streaming down her face were not for him. They were for her own humiliation. You used my money, she shrieked, her voice a raw wound. You used my trust fund to pay your gambling debts. Marcus spun around, caught between the voice of Augustus, the fury of Sloane, and me, sitting there, watching. He was trapped in the room of mirrors, and every reflection was an accuser. His eyes finally landed on me. He looked at me, his wife, the one person he thought he could fool, the one person he thought he'd break. And he saw nothing, no anger, no pain, just an administrator, closing out a file. In that perfect silent moment of his realization, the side door, the one to the observation room, opened. 2 men in dark suits entered. They were not lawyers. They were detectives from the Financial Crimes Unit. Behind them stood Augustus Harrington's 4-man legal team, holding briefcases. Mr. Marcus Vance, one of the detectives said, his voice polite, bored. Marcus was panting, his back against the wall. The detective walked forward. You are under arrest for grand larceny, wire fraud, and forgery. As they pulled his hands behind his back, clicking the handcuffs into place, he never took his eyes off me. The confusion was gone. The desperation was gone. All that was left was a pure, bottomless, and utterly impotent hatred. He had finally, in this last second, understood. They were walking him out, past a sobbing Sloane, past the smug lawyers. I stood up. I adjusted the single black earpiece in my ear, an old, useless habit from a life that was now over. I believe we're finished here, I said to the empty room. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know your thoughts, so please comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from. Be sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you really want to support the channel, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.